going. There we go. Now let's get going. Welcome to, looks like we've got Chair Emerson. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Park and Rec Commission, January 19th, 2023. The time is 6:03 p.m. Becky, can you do roll call?
You're muted, Becky.
Of course I'm muted. All right, let's try again. Commissioner Cabrales.
Here.
Commissioner Emerson.
Here.
Chair Gutierrez.
Here.
Commissioner Machado, he is absent this evening. And then Commissioner Sandoval.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, Becky, do we have anyone in the public here today? Okay, Becky, explain how the public can participate in the evening's agenda.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom or by telephone. If you are watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raise hand if you wish to speak. If you are participating by phone and wish to speak, please press *9. When it is your turn to speak, you will be notified by the host inviting you to participate. You need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you are unmuted, you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Thank you, Becky. All right, agenda amendments. Are there any amendments to the evening's agenda?
There are not.
Okay, then we can go ahead and call our first agenda item, which is to approve the regular meeting minutes of November 17th, 2022. Any questions or comments from commissioners? All right, I think that's a no. So then, Becky, do you want to open public comment? Should I say, are there any raised hands?
No, she's muted again.
Okay.
Becky, you're muted.
Multitasking here. I got to get this straightened out here. I see everyone is attending is through Zoom. So if anyone would like to speak at this time, please select the raise hand button.
I don't know what you mean by, I see everyone is.
And I see no raised hands.
All right, thank you. That closes public comment then. And if I can get a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of November 17th.
A motion to approve the minutes.
And a second.
Second. Commissioner Sandoval, second.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, roll call or vote.
So Commissioner Cabrales.
Yes.
Commissioner Emerson.
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes.
And Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
All right, motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Second item is public comment from the audience regarding items not listed on the agenda. So open public comment.
All right, again, if you are watching through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raised hand if you wish to speak at this time. All right, Chair, I do not see any raised hands.
Great, thank you. So no response to questions raised during public comment then. Let's call our next agenda item, introductions, awards, recognitions, presentations. And it looks like we have this Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. I will mute myself and hand it over.
Yeah, so we're gonna, you all have seen Lauren Ivy Thomas a few times already, so I'll just introduce her once again. She's our lead consultant on the Park and Recreation Master Plan from RHAA. And she's gonna be giving you a substantive presentation tonight.
Excellent. Good evening, commissioners. Yes, Catherine, it is quite substantive. So Please bear with us. We have a lot of information to share, but we think it's quite good information moving us in the right direction. Am I allowed to share my screen now? Okay. It says host has disabled participant sharing.
Just updated that for you. Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay. All right, here we go. All right, good evening, commissioners. Let me make sure I can see you guys on my right screen. All right, welcome to our third Parks and Recreation Commission meeting related to the City of San Rafael Parks and Recreation Master Plan. At this phase of the master plan project and for this evening, I will present to you the draft goals, policies, and actions that have been developed for this master plan, draft recommendations, and then Catherine, I understand we'll have a moment for public comment, and then finally the next steps for this master plan.
Actually, Lauren, I think maybe let's do the next steps and then have public comment and questions from the commissioners at the very end.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll go full steam through the presentation. All right, beginning with our goals, policies, and actions. RHA worked very closely with San Rafael City staff to develop these goals, policies, and actions. We'd like to point out that these goals, policies, and actions build directly from the San Rafael General Plan 2040, specifically the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element, as well as the equity, diversity, and inclusion elements of this general plan. As I move through the goals, policies, and actions, you will see the acronyms of PROS and EDI, and that is to cue you in to know where the policies that we are proposing relate directly to previously planned policies in the general plan in these two elements. We've developed 4 major goals for the Parks and Recreation system in San Rafael. The first being to support and enhance San Rafael parks. The next being to support and enhance San Rafael recreation facilities. Then to support recreation programming. And finally, to provide equitable access to San Rafael's park and recreation system, as we understand that this is a critical element, not only for the community, but the city processes to promote equity. I've color-coded these here. Each of the next slide is going to be dedicated to one of these goals, goals A through D, with associated actions and policies underneath them. So focusing on goal A, the goal of supporting and enhancing San Rafael's parks. Our first policy, 8.1, is to upgrade and modernize existing parks to meet the recreational needs of the community and to meet operational, accessibility, and safety standards. Action A 1.1, improve existing park amenities to enhance community use and create aesthetically pleasing, attractive spaces that meet community demands. Following that, we have ensure park amenities are accessible to all users on a system-wide and park level. Then we have develop and implementing consistent and inclusive branding, wayfinding, and interpretive signage for San Rafael parks. And finally, to incorporate sustainability principles in the design and construction of San Rafael park projects and enhancements. Policy 8.2 is to continue regular assessment and provide a high level of maintenance that allows San Rafael parks to prolong equipment life, ensure amenity safety, and serve as a valued community asset. Underneath policy 8.2, we have the first action, which is to improve maintenance of existing parks to meet community demand and park usage, including the development of maintenance plans and amenity replacement schedules. After that, we have providing maintenance practices that are environmentally and fiscally sustainable, including improved irrigation and natural pest management. Our third and final policy falling under goal A is 8.3, which is to support park development where feasible to address identified recreational deficiencies. The first action is to identify funding and partnership opportunities for parks development. Support following that, we have support park expansion in areas of need, including high density neighborhoods and identified neighborhoods that do not have a park within the Trust for Public Lands 10-minute standard. And finally, to explore options to address recreational amenity deficiencies that have been identified as high priority to the community. In both goal A and goal B, you'll kind of see 3 major themes here. The first theme is to address what we know is a deficient by upgrading and addressing those deficiencies, then to support what we have, continue those maintenance, and then as possible to expand where feasible. So these three themes of existing, maintaining, and expanding, you'll see in the next goal as well. For goal B, support and enhance San Rafael's recreation facilities. The first goal was related to the city parks. So the physical spaces that are the city's parks that are maintained and operated by the city. This next goal is oriented towards the city's recreational facilities. There are 4 recreational facilities, including this master plan, which include the San Rafael Community Center, Falkirk Cultural Center, Albert J. Borough, and finally Terra Linda Community Center and Pool. The first policy is to rehabilitate existing recreation facilities to meet operational, accessibility, and safety standards and to meet community demand. The actions underneath that include supporting safety of existing recreational facilities, including fire safety, seismic retrofitting, and required code upgrades. Then renovating and/or retrofitting facilities to maximize community use, followed by ensuring recreation facilities are accessible to all users. And finally, incorporating sustainability principles in the design and construction of San Rafael recreation facility projects and enhancements. The next policy, B.2, is to continue regular assessment and maintenance of San Rafael recreation facilities to prolong structural life, prevent deferred maintenance, ensure safety, and support user engagement. The action that we have drafted underneath this is to improve maintenance of existing recreation facilities to meet community demand and facility usage. Policy B.3 is to support recreational facility planning processes to address unique facility conditions and respond to changing community needs. And finally, policy B.4 is to explore opportunities for additional recreation facility access through viable partnerships. This includes the action of seeking opportunities for joint use of recreational facilities with local service providers, including, but not limited to, the San Rafael and Miller Creek school districts, to provide additional recreation facilities to the San Rafael community. Goal C explicitly relates to the city's program offerings. So these are the programs that are run and operated by the city's recreation department. Policy C1 is to maintain and enhance existing recreational programming to meet needs of San Rafael residents and support community identity. Action C1.1 is to develop a recreation program plan to guide long-range program development and define focus areas based this recreation department to create an efficient and pragmatic plan moving forward for how program offerings will be provided to the community. C1.2 is to continue to support recreational programming in high demand by the San Rafael community. Then we have to expand recreational programming to address deficiencies in program provision to the community. For coordination and provision of recreational programming, including partnership opportunities with organizations in the arts and culture, sports and leisure, aging populations, and disability care. Our final goal relates to providing equitable access to the San Rafael Park and Recreation System. Our policy underneath this is to incorporate environmental justice and social equity as key elements in the operation and planning of San Rafael's Park and Recreation Network. The first action of this is to ensure that San Rafael's Park and Recreation programs and facilities are safe, inclusive, culturally relevant, and welcoming to everyone, with particular emphasis paid to communities that have been excluded from recreational programming. A key element of environmental justice is to remediate histories of exclusion that are typically centered around cultural identity, race, and ethnicity. Action D 1.2 is to ensure that San Rafael's recreation programs are proportionally affordable based on income. D 1.3 is to consider how resource allocation decisions can reduce historic and current inequities and address the most critical community needs in future planning processes for the San Rafael Park and Recreation System. Action D 1.4 is to support an equitable distribution of parks and recreation amenities, prioritizing high-density neighborhoods in areas where homes lack their own outdoor living spaces. And finally, D 1.5 is to pursue authentic community engagement in planning processes that share power, recognize and celebrate differences, and ensure inclusion. And that concludes the goals, policies, and actions that have been drafted. And now I will move on to that have been developed for this master plan. As I spoke to in September of 2022 at our last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, we were in the process of developing prioritization criteria. We understood that this master plan would generate quite a few recommendations, specific actionable items that the city can move forward with over the next 2 decades. But in order to prioritize those recommendations and create a systematic approach for their implementation, we understood that we needed to know how these recommendations relate to one another. This graph is a showing of how we prioritize the recommendations based on a point value system. At the highest point that a recommendation could achieve was health and safety. If a recommendation was to support health and safety for the community, it gained 5 points. Following that is community priorities. Through our extensive community outreach process, we established quite a list of community priorities that were identified for San Rafael community members, and recommendations that would address those community priorities collected 3 points. In the same realm, we have service area. Service area relates to both planned density as well as popular areas for recreation. We did survey community members on the most frequently visited parks, but we also paid close attention to the general plan's land use maps that project certain allowable population densities. If recommendations addressed service areas that were more dense, or in service areas that are using more demand, more popular spaces, they also collected 3 points. Next, we have relation to General Plan 2040 guiding principles, specifically equity and sustainability. If a recommendation addresses equity and sustainability through the lens of general plan, it collected 2 points. In the same level, we have accessibility. If recommendation were to support accessibility and remove accessibility barriers, that recommendation collects. And then finally, we have operational efficiency and included in previous planning as our single point earners. Operational efficiency is to support the city's maintenance staff in operating the city-owned properties. And then included in previous planning is a recommendation that has already been made in previous planning documents, whether it's the general plan or other site-specific plans. From our list of recommendations, we generated a total of 150 recommendations. We are in the process we're in the mid-process of our financial planning strategy, but these recommendations are totaling at about $18 million worth of work. These $18 million worth of projects will not happen immediately. I would like to reiterate that a master plan is a guiding document, seen as a guiding document for 10 to 20 years of development for a city. Within these 150 recommendations, we identified deficiency improvements, expansion opportunities, as well as policy-oriented recommendations. Further dividing those recommendations, we broke them out into near-term, medium-term, long-term, and other categories. This directly relates to how recommendations scored using the prioritization criteria that we developed with the city through community outreach, as well as in our last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Near-term projects are potentially achievable within the next 5 years, and near-term projects have typically ranked highest in their score, meaning that they are hitting all the community serving recommendations, providing the biggest bang for the buck. Medium-term projects we've identified as foreseeable to be achievable in about 5 to 10 years. These are high-ranking projects, but a little bit below the most highest ranking projects. Following that, we have our long-term projects. These are projects that are potentially achievable in over 10 years. Again, these are priorities for the city, but based on available resources, we understand these park projects we may see coming in the next 10 or more years. And finally, we do have a category for other projects. I will go through that at the end of this presentation, but those categories include ongoing, as resources allow, and to be addressed through larger projects. I'm going to begin by talking about the recommendations that are park specific in the near term, medium term, and long term categories. And the near-term recommendations specifically for park improvements. So as I discussed this, think that these are recommendations that are explicitly relate to park sites in San Rafael. These are loosely based on how they relate to each other, with the highest scoring recommendations at the top and the lowest scoring recommendations towards the bottom, lower scoring recommendations toward the bottom. But again, I reiterate that these are loosely based and they all relate quite well to each other in that high priority category, which we see as near term. Firstly, we have Pickleweed Park and continuing the development of Pickleweed Park Enhancement Project with the support of public grant funds. After that, we have addressing fencing deficiencies at Albert Stadium and Field. This project is to prevent liability from the city and that conflict of use between vehicles, sports, and pedestrians. Then we have for Terra Linda, preparing a master plan for the Terra Linda Park and Community Center to determine future improvements based on planning efforts. We understand that this park and community center are critical to the community, well used by the community, and they deserve their own planning process to determine the future design and development and eventual construction or reconstruction of this site. After that, we have updating play areas in Peacock Gap Park, removing sand, replacing it with fiber, and replacing play structures. Then we have evaluating the historic water system for structural integrity at Boyd Memorial Park. We understand that it's currently stable, but moving forward, we would like to see that facility remain checked in the future. Following that, we have updating play areas at Gerstle Park and Oleander Park, replacing sand for fiber and replacing play structures. After that, we have resurfacing the tennis courts at Peacock Gap and Freitas Parks. We understand that tennis is a priority. Moving forward, we have evaluating and improving pathways at Gerstle Park. After that, improving the tennis court amenities and facilities at Albert Park. Supporting and exploring options to increase plot capacity and improving existing infrastructure at the Terra Linda Community Garden. Citywide, this means that this is a citywide project that can relate to all parks, is to repair the identified priority physical deficiencies at park restrooms. As you may remember, in addition to doing a park inventory for this master plan, we also contracted with MAC 5 architects and cost estimators, and they did a very detailed assessment of all of the city's recreational facilities, as well as the physical park structures, specifically the restrooms in all city parks, and quite a significant list of physical deficiencies at these parks restrooms has been identified. And then finally, to develop a comprehensive assessment of the Falkirk Cultural Center's unique historic and architectural qualities to guide future programming. Similarly, in the vein of developing a master plan dedicated to Terra Linda Park, we see that for future use, planning, and development of Falkirk Cultural Center, the city first needs to conduct a comprehensive assessment to evaluate the significant historic asset. Our medium-term projects, again, these are still strong priorities for the community, but ranking slightly below our near-term projects. The first of this is to resurface tennis courts and pathways for ADA accessibility. If this project were to be achieved, it would provide an accessible tennis court in northern San Rafael. Then we have replacing play structures at Boyd Memorial Park, followed by resurfacing asphalt and concrete paving at Oleander Park, resurfacing asphalt paving at Peacock Gap Park. At both Riviera and Oliver Park, we are proposing that the city evaluate the best recreational purposes for the site. The playgrounds at both of these sites are long past their life cycle. They do not meet code requirements, but rather than replacing them in kind with another play structure, we do encourage the city to consider additional recreational options that might meet community demands better. Following that, we have addressing the parking lot paving challenges at Albert Park, evaluating feasibility of and pursuing tennis court renovations at Gerstle Park, evaluating recreation options for tennis courts at Boyd Memorial Park. Similar to how I discussed Riviera Park and Oliver Hartzell Park, we understand that there may be additional recreational options that could be achieved at this site rather than replacing it in kind with a tennis court. Then we have resurfacing asphalt paving at Boyd Memorial Park, resurfacing asphalt paving at Freitas Park, evaluating alternative uses for the reflection pond at the Falkirk Cultural Center. This is a valuable amenity that could be used in community events should be assessed for that viability. Then we have considering options for improved maintenance at both the Canal Community Garden and the Terra Linda Community Garden. And finally, exploring options and locations for self-directed fitness equipment throughout the city. Currently, Peacock Gap is the only park in the city that offers self-directed fitness equipment, also known as park course equipment, which is outdoor fitness equipment that's distributed over certain increments in some type of walking loop or pedestrian loop. And based on our community outreach, we understand that independent fitness is a priority for the community. Moving into our long-term recommendations for park improvements. We're starting with Gerstle Park, which is to resurface asphalt paving at basketball court and play areas. Then considering a long-term solution for the restroom at Boyd Memorial Park. We understand that Boyd Memorial Park did previously have a permanent restroom. However, now it is currently a temporary restroom. So the city may want to consider a permanent solution for this. At Jean and John Starkweather Park, there have been previous interpretive signage plans that have been proposed, and we encourage the city to continue with those signage plans to promote the very unique environment that's along the shoreline. At Peacock Gap Park, replacing and repairing the park course equipment, as it previously mentioned. At Boyd Memorial Park, pursuing pathway and trail improvements on site and continuing up to San Rafael Hill. This is a potential pedestrian open space connection. Then we have evaluating potential recreational uses for the former playground at Bernard Hoffman Field. There is a playground area with wood fiber, but no playground amenities right next to the softball field. So should the city decide to move forward with that, it should be determined what that space should be used for. At Canal Community Garden and Menson Park, we see opportunities for potential location for biopreventative pest management practices, which is already utilized in several of the city's parks. At Gerstle Park, we understand that there is opportunities to improve access for the adjacent open space hiking. At Jean and John Starkweather Park, we understand that there are opportunities for additional boating and water sports access ramps. For being a California community, it is not very common to have a bayfront property that is publicly accessible. And taking advantage of this facility for the community is a priority for the city. At Santa Margarita Park, we envision resurfacing the asphalt paving at the basketball court. And at Victor Jones Park, we recommend assessing the sport functionality as well as eventually replacing the restroom. Similarly, at Peacock Gap Park, we also recommend replacing the restroom eventually as resources allow. Moving on, we're still in the long-term recommendations. This list is a little bit longer than one page. We have Bernard Hoffman supporting the drainage at the field. We understand that currently drainage is poor and it has actually negatively impacted the site maintenance and operation. At Sun Valley Park, we understand that the upper terrace area is not currently utilized and has opportunity to be better and more safely utilized. At the Terra Linda Community Garden, we see the ability to add garden amenities similar to those that are found at Canal Community Gardens, such as storage sheds, seating areas. At Terra Linda Community Garden, enhancing the biopreventative management practices to avoid getting into gardeners' supplies. Riviera Park, replacing the small wooden retaining walls of this pocket park. And finally, to improve access to adjacent open space adjacent to Bret Harte Park. So those are the park-specific recommendations organized into the three categories of near-term, medium-term, and long-term. Next, as I previously stated, the master plan also proposes a series of policies. Policies are typically treated slightly different than park or facility recommendations because they come with different costs associated. Unlike a cost that's associated with a playground replacement or asphalt repaving, policy recommendations are typically more administrative. These are administrative opportunities for the department directly and how the department can be operated more efficiently or create policies that are system-wide to kind of just create a more cohesive planning department. Sorry, not planning department, but a cohesive system for the department to manage. The first policy that we see as being very important is to explore public and private partnerships at Beach Park. We understand that the Beach Park is currently closed. It has some very unique conditions that require a public or private partnership in order to meet the needed oversight for site safety. Citywide, we understand that a dog park program should be put in place. Through our community outreach, we heard mixed reviews for dogs. We heard many folks interested in on leash, many folks interested in off leash. So this guides us to believe that a policy should be put in place to determine those on leash and off leash areas. At Albert Park and Freitas Park, revamping the tennis key system so that it's managed directly by the Recreation Department. Citywide, there is certainly opportunity to reclassify city parks, specifically Jeremy Russell Park, Bret Hart Park, and Munson Park. The key advantage of reclassifying parks is to support operational practices. A community park typically requires a lot more maintenance than, for say, a neighborhood park. So moving some of these categories will alleviate the expected maintenance needs on the city. Also, we encourage the city to offer training opportunities for staff to support and understand diversity, equity, inclusion. In order to really embrace DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion, the city should make sure that staff understand DEI. Then we have evaluating restrooms maintenance citywide. We understand that currently city maintenance is not meeting city needs, but in order to create a systematic approach to how that could be improved, there needs to be a maintenance strategy. At Pickleweed Park and Albert Park, we understand that additional maintenance resources are needed for both the Pickleweed Fields and Albert Fields. These are treasured amenities, however, the city cannot operate them efficiently on their own as a public entity. The next four are citywide that we see as important to help the city organize recommendations as resources become available. The first is to develop a system-wide irrigation replacement schedule. Most of the city's park irrigation systems are about 60 to 70 years old, requiring a substantial redesign and redevelopment of these irrigation systems. But before tackling them, we should prioritize which ones to start first. Again, similarly, creating a citywide fiber replacement program at playgrounds, creating a system-wide playground amenity replacement schedule. Playgrounds do have life cycles of about 10 to 15 years. So by creating a replacement schedule, the city can plan ahead to know when resources will be available for those replacements to occur, looking 10 to 20 years ahead. And then finally, developing a system-wide tennis court resurfacing schedule. Like play amenities, benches, the physical facilities in parks, tennis courts do require resurfacing repeatedly over a number of times. So we would like to encourage the city to have a strategy in that. Our medium-term recommendations are to first develop a comprehensive maintenance plan for city parks. We understand that the city could certainly benefit from having a more strategic and planning-oriented strategy for maintenance for the city parks specifically. Also developing a comprehensive maintenance plan for the city's recreation facilities. Recreation facilities require a lot of maintenance for the kitchens, for cleaning, for staff offices. So having a comprehensive maintenance plan is critical to be efficient with city expenditures. Also to develop a unifying system-wide and recreation signage for the city's parks. Then we have assess opportunities for pickleball striping or pickleball conversion project system-wide. We know that tennis is a priority, and through our community outreach, pickleball did not receive the same level of importance, but as these two activities can overlap, we would like to plan for an opportunity where those spaces could be shared. Next, we have entering into joint use agreements with organizations such as the San Rafael City Schools, but not limited to the San Rafael City Schools. Then exploring public-private partnerships to refurbish athletic fields at Albert Stadium. At Gristol Park, we see partnership opportunities to maintain the historic nature of the landscaping. I believe I've mentioned this in previous meetings, but for a city to have several sites that are over 100 years old is quite significant. And we understand that Gristol Park has a very unique history. And in order to support that history, we encourage some partnership with that community. Then we have developing a policy for splash pad operations at Freitas Park and potentially citywide. Again, to develop a recreation program plan, which is explicitly mentioned in our goals, policies, and actions And finally, to evaluate the historic system resources, historic water system resources that we see throughout San Rafael. At many San Rafael parks, there are actually aged cisterns that are not currently used, but they do hold irrigation. So the city should decide how to move forward with that. Excellent. So we've talked about park recommendations and near to long term, and we've talked about policy recommendations, which only fall in the near and medium term categories. In addition, so within these 150 recommendations, we also see new and expanded park amenities. A challenge with new and expanded park amenities is resource allocation. Through our community outreach, speaking with our stakeholders, speaking with city staff, we understand that the priority currently right now is to fix what San Rafael already has. That has been a priority, to improve maintenance, to improve infrastructure, and to essentially build the park system up into a more viable, usable, safer park system. However, this is a master planning process, and we don't want to just be focused on the now. We do want and need to look to the future to make sure we have a written record of potential expansions for the city as resources become available to the community. A major expansion that we see as an opportunity as resources allow is expansion and improvement along the shoreline path network. That is the Jean and John Starkweather path. As I briefly stated earlier, for a city to have a shoreline property that's publicly accessible is fantastic. It's amazing, and the city should continue to support improving this amenity for public use. After that, we do understand that there are specific neighborhoods within the San Rafael community that do not have access to neighborhoods as other neighborhoods have access to. This is called out explicitly in the general plan, and we reiterate it right here. Those 5 communities are the Montecito Dominican neighborhood, West End Fair Hills neighborhood, Lincoln San Rafael Hill neighborhood, Contemplo Deer Park neighborhood, and Northbridge Marin Lagoon neighborhood. Expanding parks is a heavy resource lift. So as resources become available, as acquisitions become available, we would like to maintain that written record that these neighborhoods will need parkland eventually. And then finally, exploring recreation options for the northern portion of Freitas Park. Many of you may not know, but Freitas Park is actually broken into 2 parks. There's the southern side, which has the restroom, play amenities, picnic shelters, lawn, but there's also a northern part, which is currently unprogrammed. And we understand that there has been some past incentive on programming this with either picnic tables, gathering areas, or potentially a walking labyrinth. We also have facility improvement recommendations. So you may note that in that big list that I went through for park recommendations and policy recommendations, we did not specifically list facility improvement recommendations. Through this master plan, we partnered with MAC5, architects and cost estimators, and they provided an incredibly detailed physical assessment of the city's recreation facilities and restrooms. This assessment included architectural, mechanical, structural, and ADA recommendations with very detailed information on specific deficiencies as well as dollar values associated with addressing these deficiencies. For efficiency, we are going to fold that facility assessment in with the Department of Public Works facility master plan. We have excellent data that the Department of Public Works can utilize to fold into their facility master plan. And we've worked very closely with April Miller throughout this process to make sure that we're cohesively sharing this information. Finally, I would just like to take a note to say that within that list of 150 recommendations, we do kind of have these other categories. These other categories of ongoing as resources allow and to be addressed through other projects. So ongoing recommendations are recommendations that the city is already achieving. Most of these are relating to the general plan 2040, where specific recommendations were taken into account and the city has already adopted them. But we would like to have that written record that the city continue to do this. As resources allow, specifically relate to irrigation replacements. As I mentioned, a lot of the city's irrigation systems are 60 to 70 years old. So we see those as resources allow projects. bench and picnic table replacement projects, which the Recreation Department has created a partner program. So community members can fund replacements. And then also, as resources allow, includes projects that will utilize significant resources, as well as projects that will require a substantial public funds. And then finally, to be addressed through larger projects is largely ADA barrier removal projects. As you may remember, as part of this master plan, we've partnered with architect Steve Hall, who is a certified access specialist. Similar to the facilities assessment, he developed an incredibly detailed accessibility assessment for all of the city's parks, thoroughly documenting the existing accessibility barriers. And I'm also a landscape architect in addition to being a planner. And what often happens when new development, new projects happen is existing ADA deficiencies automatically must be addressed. So with greater projects on a site, say a new playground, a new picnic facility, it is required, typically required per code, that any existing ADA barriers should also be remediated in that general new development, new construction project. So since they will already be folded in that strategy, that process, we're largely putting those in our to be addressed through other projects category. Okay, so I will briefly move on to next steps, and then we will open it up for a conversation. So as I mentioned, we are midway, a little bit over midway through our financial strategizing and planning process. We're working with EPS public finance planners who specialize in identifying public resources to fund, these $18 million worth of projects. That will be the final part of this master plan, and then eventually the draft master plan. The draft master plan will be a physical document, also available online digitally, at least about 200 pages with a variety of appendices. There will be 5 chapters, an executive summary, needs assessment, goals, policies, the recommendations, and finally the financial strategizing, which is typically the implementation plan. And we are going to City Council at the end of next month, and hopefully we will have this master plan adopted no later than April of 2023. And that concludes my presentation.
So I think we'll start with any comments, questions from our commission.
You can, I can't see all the people, so I don't know if there's hands raised. Hold on, let me try this.
Lauren, do you want to unshare? your
Chair Emerson, go ahead.
I
I'll
am
start
no
on
longer the
Trevor.
chair, but I'm happy.
Oh,
to-
sorry.
Yay.
Commissioner
start there.
Emerson, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. I think it sounds like a really great plan, and I'm, as always, overwhelmed by just the amount of deferred maintenance that we have and the incredible expense that it will occur before we're able to expand. So I'm just wondering, as it goes to the City Council, is there funding recommendations that's going to go along with it? Maybe this is a question more for you, Catherine, because again, having served on this commission for a while and understanding the landscape all this better, that there's just so much that needs to get done to just get to safety. And then, moving forward. So I hate, it's great to have a plan that sits on a shelf. But like, if there's not a specific ask, I worry that some of the long-term plans are not going to get focused on, which I think are really important for our community to thrive and just moving forward as a San Rafael.
Yeah, I'll actually let Lauren handle that because that is part of the plan. The financial analysis is part of the planning process.
Yes, absolutely. Critical to that financial planning process is us to create those costs. So what we've done in this master plan is we've achieved that goal of creating the recommendations, confirming the recommendations, and providing planning level costs with plus or minus 30% contingency for those recommendations. Our financial planners have those cost estimates and they have already identified potential funding resources. I can't speak to that as well as they can, which they will in the coming meetings and coming conversations with Catherine and Craig. But yes, funding opportunities will certainly be presented with this master plan.
And I think what, part of that is analyzing the funding sources that we do already have, which are predominantly Measure A. And then we do also receive some development fees. And as well as the building maintenance fund for our facilities, and then seeing what the deficit is and presenting options that the city might consider moving forward.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Lauren and her team?
I see that you changed the wording from just the school districts to not limited to, and I appreciate that. That was one of the comments that I had mentioned yesterday. You guys did that fast. Thank you.
Thank you, of course.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one other, like, it's
ahead.
totally in my lane of health and human services, but is there any considerations? I haven't been part of the planning process in terms of readiness for facilities to be temporary evacuation centers or places by which people, if we have evacuations, being prepared for that, or the agreements, or I know it's a different lane, but I'm in my county planning public health preparedness. Is that part of the master plan at all? In terms of the joint use of the facilities to be able to be used for emergency preparedness operations? Because they're big warehouses, just like schools, and we're looking for partners for that. As Catherine knows.
Yeah, that really hasn't been part of the conversation around the Park and Recreation Master Plan. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations through our work on the EOC, working with our emergency operations team. So it's definitely on the city's radar, and something, I mean, even just with this last round of atmospheric rivers, if there's a land, Craig and I were on a Saturday afternoon call, if there's a landslide tonight in San Rafael, what are we going to do? And, it was open San Rafael Community Center for people who need somewhere to go. And when we're not in the middle of an emergency, we need to be pre-planning this a little bit. We need to be having those pre-plans as well. So it's definitely on the radar. It's not included in this plan. I think it's something we can talk about. I'd be curious to hear Lauren's thoughts on that discussion. But yeah, it's definitely on the city's radar and something we are working towards, but we haven't really talked about it in the context of this plan yet.
Right. In my planning work, I am familiar with, recent grant resources that relate to establishing resilient centers. For this master plan, no, we have not folded that explicitly in, but I definitely see a brief opportunity to at least mention that in our facility inventory, to talk about the importance of public facilities as centers of refuge and emergency. So thank you very much, Commissioner Emerson. We can absolutely fold that in.
And I could also see that playing more of a role in the Terra Linda master plan process. Because I think of all of our facilities, that's the one that's probably the most deficient in terms of serving as like the existing infrastructure to respond to emergency operations. But yeah, that's a good comment we'll think on.
Yeah, at the county level, we're thinking about like showers and stuff at the Civic Center, just knowing that what we've seen with the evacuated families in Fairfax is that they can't just be evacuated and go back to their homes, and there's long-term needs, whether you do it in a hotel or in your own facility, just trying to prepare ourselves for that.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for listening. I think it'd be good to just weave it in, because if you're planning on doing site improvements at the big recreational facilities, perhaps some of that stuff could be included in terms of that readiness for disaster preparedness.
Absolutely. And more importantly, the readiness to get those grants that are available, that public funding that is available for resilient centers. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other Comments, questions? Okay, I had one comment, one question. Question is on goal A. It mentions the TPL 10-minute basically distance to a park. Is that driving or walking?
Walking.
And then I also just wanted to comment on one of the items. I know these are largely community driven and things like that. It talking about building in park space for people who live in high density areas. And I just wanted to appreciate that that was in there because it's significantly lacking. And I recently heard that there was something like 200 new unaccompanied minors coming into the Santa Fe High School districts. That's a big chunk of newcomers to our neighborhood. And I appreciate all the DEI sort of pieces of this and hoping that that really does effectually weave its way into decisions, because it's obviously neighborhoods change, obviously cities change, but clearly we're seeing some significant influxes of specific neighborhoods, and happy to see that that's being addressed. Do we open public comment on this? Okie dokie, Becky.
All right, for those of you who are watching through Zoom, please select the raise hand button at this time if you wish to speak. Once it is your turn, you will be notified by the host inviting you to participate. And once you are unmuted, you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Looks like we do have 2 hands up. Get my timer ready here, and we'll go ahead and start with Lori. Whenever you're ready, Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I am ready. And the first thing I have to say is, Lauren, I can't believe you still have a voice. You are very impressive. I have to tell you that. 2 things I wanted to address. One is Beach Park. Beach Park was not closed before Terrapin took it over. Beach Park is now closed. Why is Beach Park closed? I can't imagine it's an orphan, and I was curious if San Rafael has closed any other parks. The second thing I wanted to address was the fence between Albert Park and Safeway, which was put up, and that is, speaking of disasters, a disaster waiting to happen, because should somebody have to run out of Safeway or out of the community center, that fence goes like literally the entire length of the Safeway parking lot, which is tremendous. So that's it, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lori. I don't know if staff have any response, or I don't believe it's required, but we'll
I
move
think we'll
on.
take all public comment and then we can respond.
Thank you. So
together.
Becky, go ahead.
Okay, it looks like next up we have Kate. So whenever you are ready, Kate, you have 3 minutes.
I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I wanted to just mention that I think it's really important for the master plan to be understood in terms of how it integrates with the other planning documents and infrastructure in the city. I think parks are really important for adaptability and flexibility in terms of the climate action plan. How do they increase the city's resiliency? What are the opportunities for individual parks to incorporate green infrastructure, for example, swales or flood basins during storms? How do the parks incorporate the part of the general plan in terms of community design and preservation? How are the parks part of an integrated public realm that includes pathways and greenways and trees? In the community design and preservation section, there is a reference to the tree planning for the city, which is underway right now. And the other planning document that I think is really important is the Bike Ped Master Plan. It's planned for an update for the next fiscal year. And the current master plan goals, the top 2 are safety and connectivity. And though the plan mentions access, it doesn't really mention physical access. And a lot of people recreate by walking or bicycling. And so how people get to and from their recreation areas or the parks could be an opportunity for this plan to inform safe routes to parks, maybe for the master planning update of the bike ped master plan. And so I think it's important also to identify which parks serve the larger community, and like the Terra Linda Community Center and Park, and have how that planning then includes community-wide outreach, and then neighborhood parks that are planned specifically for the neighborhood residents that use those parks is part of and is important. So I just looking for more of a sense of how the Parks and Rec are part of a system-wide, not just Department of Public Works improvements, but kind of a system-wide planning vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Becky, is there anyone else?
I do not see any other raised hands. I do not see any other raised hands, but we can give it another few seconds here. Anyone needed a comment? We don't have any others.
All right. Well, thank you. Do we want, is there anything else before we let Lauren and Barbara go?
I don't know, Lauren, if you wanted to speak to any of those points, particularly maybe some of the last ones around, because I think one of the things that's tricky is that the final document is going to be a couple hundred pages, and we're trying to, you know, break out pieces of this to present that won't take the entire night. So I think some of those elements of like tying that to the larger planning documents and then more of that citywide multi-department approach will be in the ultimate plan. It's just unfortunately wasn't part of what was broken off to speak to tonight. So Lauren, are you able to speak to that a little bit?
Certainly, yes. At the very beginning of this master plan, while we were doing the inventory process, we completed a document review. We do actually have that report, and I believe it's actually online. I think it was released maybe in the end of August, or believe late this summer. And in that document review, we go through all of the city's existing master planning projects that relate to parks and recreation, and explicitly, do a brief description of what the master plan is, and then call out the plan's policies and any recommendations that relate to park and recreational master plan. So folding that content into a presentation like this is very difficult, because I could probably spend 2 hours doing just that. But Kate, I appreciate your concern. And yes, in the master plan, you will see that we are referencing the documents that we've reviewed. And we do understand that there's a trails master plan that will occur, and that the bike and pedestrian master plan will be updated. So those will be cohesively addressed.
And then I wanted to respond to the comment around Beach Park. So that is currently the only city amenity that is closed, although the city in other instances has removed amenities due to health and safety concerns. So another example is at Bernard Hoffman, there was a playground there that was determined to no longer be structurally sound, that the city removed. And it's a similar approach with Beach Park. So the reason that we entered into the partnership with Beach Park, or with Terrapin Crossroads to begin with, was because of the situation we were seeing at Beach Park, that the levels of unwanted illegal behavior were such that we really felt for that park to be safely operated, it needed a higher level of oversight than and kind of on-site management, physical presence than the city is able to provide to our parks. So that's why we entered into the partnership with Terrapin to begin with, and why when Terrapin closed down, the city made the decision to close the park because of the levels of unsafe illegal behavior we were seeing, and the concern that would just resume. And so yeah, so that's kind of the situation there. That is one of the reasons why it is a high priority on our policy list, is to address that. You know, we are hopeful that there will be some resolution to that neighboring property, that either there will be a natural partnership there, or we'll see that it's not, and we'll adjust and kind of look at other options for reopening that park.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Emerson had another question.
One comment, just, yeah, thank you on linking to any existing plans. And I do think that it would behoove us as a commission to have eyes on what not the complete streets plan, that's my mind, the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and how that relates to access to parks and recs within, you know, towns. But my second thing is just more in terms of ongoing, how is this plan gonna, once it goes to city council, how is it gonna be reviewed, by whom? What is the ongoing plan for accountability for the city to work this plan, and this plan to be worked once it is approved? Just curious about like, what's our involvement, what's the best practice, because obviously that's, you know, a concern.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that I kind of have been thinking about throughout this whole process with this plan is giving us a roadmap for our Measure A, kind of how we allocate Measure A. And I think that those conversations are going to continue to happen with this group on an annual basis. And ideally, and our goal is, I know in the past few years, it's been a little bit challenging because we've gotten our allocations late. And so we haven't been able to have as robust a conversation as I think I'd like to moving forward. So I think through the Measure A process, that's when we'll be able to kind of revisit this list and evaluate, do these projects still feel like they're relevant, have their, and are there other projects that have maybe sprouted up that we need to look at, or projects that maybe the situation has changed, we need to reevaluate where they are on the list? I think there's a few things in this that should be evergreen for kind of the 10-year lifespan. And those are the recommendation criteria that were outlined, and those will be criteria that we can continue to use moving forward as we look at changing scenarios and need to adapt. And I think the goals, policies, and actions that Lauren outlined will also be, we kind of looked at those as having a lifespan throughout the length of this plan. Those are really much more at a higher, more general kind of like, these are just our values and the things that should be guiding us. So having those two kind of elements of this master plan, I think will help us be adaptable and flexible as we look at different like priority both projects and policies that may come up.
So I guess, just not to be like cross talking, but I guess I would ask that in your proposal to the city council, you're clear about that review of the plan and those elements and how that's going to work moving forward, just so we're clear on what our role is and how often it's going to get revisited by whom, rather than just having the plan be finalized, and whether it's Measure A or coming to this group, just for transparency in terms of how this master plan gets implemented. Because having not been part of the committee, I'm sorry, I'm being really vocal, but I'm just not clear. And just, that's just a suggestion. Thank you for everything you do.
All right. Anybody else before we close this item? All right. Lauren, Barbara, thank you for your hard work. You guys are free to go.
Thank you.
I think we don't need to accept it, right? Or anything like that, Catherine? No. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right. We have some matters before the commission. we are going to call the next agenda item, which is the review of the Park and Rec Commission annual work plan. And I believe that's April. Nope,
It's
she's
actually-
gone.
I think that's going to be me, actually.
Great. It's Craig. Take it
Hi,
away.
everyone. Yeah, so I'm going to just share a couple of notes on this, and then I'm going to share my screen and pull up the work plan so that we can all review it together and talk through any of the items that you'd like to discuss. So, on an annual basis, our goal is to try to make sure that we bring items to your attention that we think are going to be relevant to helping you guide and inform our work as staff here. And we want to make sure that you have adequate time to review that work schedule. So we're bringing you a list of items that we think are necessary for your review this year, as well as things that we know that we're going to need your feedback on and support on from the committee. We want to work with you to help develop this. So this is definitely an interactive process. The items that we brought forward here, some of those we know we will have to do, but we definitely have some room for shifting some of those items on the agenda and making sure that the things that you would like to see and discuss are also represented here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull that draft work schedule up for review. And just a moment, my screen is frozen. If you can still hear me, I cannot see anyone. My screen froze.
We can hear you, but your screen is not coming up.
Okay. I've got the spinning wheel here. I'm going to wait a second and hope that this comes back. My screen is completely frozen on my end. My apologies.
Becky, are you able to remove Craig's ability to share screen? And then maybe I could share mine.
Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I'm still completely frozen over here. So it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without at least one major tech issue, I suppose. But
I'm just thinking because we can hear you. So if I just pull it up, then you can walk us through it.
Yeah, let me see if I can switch to host only and then back to all panelists, see if that'll.
Oh, all right. We've got.
my screen is back here, so I may try again.
Do you want to, or you just want me to share my screen and then you can walk us through it?
Okay, can you see my screen here? Oh.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I think maybe Craig, we should.
Yeah, let's just switch over.
So Becky, can you do whatever you did last time? All right, is everyone able to see my screen? Oh,
Oops, sorry, let me go one more time.
we had it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, how about that?
Yes.
All right. So today's meeting, January 19th, we're in the middle of, so I'm going to skip beyond that and talk about upcoming months. One of the things that we wanted to talk about is the park maintenance and project status report. Typically in the past, we brought that forward on a quarterly basis. In conversation with our Department of Public Works, we determined that it might be better to bring that on a biannual basis that aligns with some of the work that they're doing over there. So right now, what we're showing on this work plan is that we would bring that forward in February, and then we would have another report later in the year where we would bring that information forward. So that is one thing I wanted to bring to your If it's September is when we have that shown. There are some annual reports listed here that we want to make sure that you're aware of the different programming that take place. So the San Rafael Community Center, Albert Field Tennis Court Program report. We would also later in the season bring forward a report for Terra Linda Community Center and aquatics programs, as well as the Alberta Borough Community Center and the programs that happen there. There are also several reports on an annual basis that we have agreements with other groups, such as the Marin Bocce Federation that we'd be bringing forward, the San Rafael Girls Softball annual presentation, and the Golden Ears Older Adult Programming. So we have agreements with them that require them to provide some level of reporting to the commission and to staff. And so those are showing up here throughout the calendar for that reason. And it's also just really helpful and useful information to understand the level of programming that they provide. A couple notable things here on this work schedule. In April, we're hoping to bring forward the draft Measure A work plan. Catherine mentioned how important that's going to be, and so we're hoping to bring that forward to you then. Also, Pickleweed Park Enhancement Project Design. We're hoping to bring that forward to you in April as well. There's an off-leash dogs pilot program that we want to start talking about with you. One of the things that we may bring forward is some ideas about creating a subcommittee to help talk about the conversation of how do we approach off-leash dogs in city parks. Right now, we're hoping to bring that forward sometime in April. And then we've heard from this group in the past that it might be useful to have an on-site park tour. In July, we scheduled that tentatively. We thought that might be a good opportunity to really talk about some of the current and upcoming parks projects that would be happening at that point in time, and maybe visit a few of the parks where either that work is happening, is scheduled to start soon, or has just been completed. So that we have that scheduled tentatively for July. Another notable one in May, we have a tennis court reservation pilot program that we may talk about. We want one of the policies that there may be a recommendation in the master plan to review with their tennis court program and the key system. So we may bring that forward in May to try to address that policy. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's other topics that could be included here. So there's definitely an opportunity for conversation. And I think at that point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the group for discussion about this and see if there's anything that we would like to change or include.
All right, thank you. This was good timing. There was just like screaming children in here and they walked out the door. So now I can unmute. And
I'm sorry, Chair Gutierrez, I realized too, the other key thing I wanted to mention as part of this conversation, we sent an email out to, I apologize for cutting you off there.
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
We sent an email out earlier this week to the commissioners about the plan to return back to a hybrid schedule for these meetings, which means that we would be meeting in person and also have the opportunity to meet in a hybrid format. And so I just wanted to bring that up in light of this conversation. That may or may not pertain to some of this, but I think it's important for all of you to know that beginning with the March meeting, that is when we're expecting that we would be returning back to that hybrid format, and that commissioners and staff would be primarily be meeting on site in accordance with the email that you should have received earlier.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful. So starting in March, it seems like generally we'll be in person unless there's extenuating circumstances. All right, any questions or comments from commissioners? And let me see hands. I just saw one and then my screen jumped. There we go, Commissioner Sandoval.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the plan. I'm happy to see the off-leash dog plan in there. I think it's like, it's come up a few times and I know the community cares about it. So looking forward to that. I was curious, like, is our discussion of Measure A going to come up just like at some points throughout the year, or do we have a specific meeting for that?
So right now we have the Measure A work plan scheduled for the April 20th meeting. that's the primary time where we would be bringing forward that draft plan with the projects that would be funded through Measure A for your review and for your approval.
Got it. Thanks. Now I
And
see
I
it.
would also just say about the off-leash dog, we have that in April. My suspicion is that will probably come before you a couple of times this year, because as Craig mentioned, I think our current thinking on the approach is that we would want to form a subcommittee and do a pretty substantial amount of public outreach around it. This is definitely an issue, as Lauren mentioned in her presentation, where there are strong feelings on both sides. And I think engaging the community, and particularly those around the parks where we have seen this to be kind of a hot button issue, is going to be important. So I imagine it'll probably be a decent length process, where we kind of kick it off in April and then come back to the commission with recommendations later in the year.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
And I think, I'm not sure if Craig mentioned, but this is, this is a living document. So this is kind of our best guess at this moment, but things will come up. I know there's a few things in the master, like I was even just thinking that part of the master plan, one of the recommendations that will probably from a policy standpoint also move on quickly with off-leash dogs is developing like a program strategy. And I'm sure that's something that would be brought maybe within the next year to the commission. So yeah, this is definitely not set in stone. And if things come up throughout the year, we'll be sure to adjust as needed.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Is comprehensive. Thank you for putting it all together. I love seeing all the topics and that we can kind of look forward to and think about, and including the ones at the bottom and more to come.
Yeah, as Craig and I were working on this, we're like, wow, this is going to be a busy year. Got some substantive meetings with this group.
Great. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions or comments from commissioners, we open it up to public comment.
Sorry, I think
Go ahead.
I had
Sorry.
just it's been a long day and I'm not sure I'm totally understanding. So just let me know if I missed this. Is it that instead of like having like a biannual check-in like we do with the park and the park maintenance, will we have something like that scheduled for the master plan here? Just kind of going off what Commissioner Emerson was saying, like having like something that's like a regular scheduled, and then of course we can add to it as we go along. But I think it would be kind of a good idea to have that sort of just as a plan, like of like regularly, even if it's just once or twice a year. And that would sort of hit, I think, what Commissioner Emerson was saying, where we're actively reaching out to find out what's happening and not just waiting to hear what's happening with the plan.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think that might make sense to do on like an annual basis. And Craig and I can kind of brainstorm on this a little bit. I'm almost thinking about it as like an annual goal setting sort of thing, of like, we on a yearly basis, we look back at the master plan and see like, okay, what did we accomplish from it this past year? What are our goals moving for the coming year? And that could be something we discuss with this commission. I like that idea.
Oh, yeah, good. I just feel like it does give that sort of sense of accountability to the plan, that we're trying to reach out to follow it is how I would sense that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Becky.
All right, thank you. Yes, we do still have some attendees. So if you were watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raised hand if you wish to speak at this time. And I do not see any raised hands, Chair.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and close public comment, and if we could get a motion and a second to accept this work plan. from our commissioners?
Okay, I'll motion to accept the work plan.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, Becky?
Commissioner Cabrales,
Yes.
Commissioner Emerson,
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Motion passed.
All right, thank you. Our next agenda item is the CPRS District 1 Community Service Award nomination for Carol Jacobs Courts. And who's Craig or Catherine, who's gonna tell us all about Carol's successes?
Yeah, this is a really fun agenda item. First off, just a little background on CPRS. It's the California Park and Recreation Society, and we are a member of that agency. The state's divided into 15 different districts. We're a member of District 1. And each year, districts, they have an awards ceremony, and they also use that ceremony to acknowledge community service efforts and install their board of directors on an annual basis. Agencies have an opportunity to nominate community members who have made contributions to their district agency and their community through either volunteering or making donations that assisted in creating community through people, parks, and programs. And agencies can submit nominations each year. Nominees who are selected for the award will be invited to participate in an award ceremony, and this year's ceremony is scheduled for Saturday, February 11th at the Petaluma Community Center. So the deadline to submit nominations is tomorrow for the 2022 calendar year, and we had an opportunity to talk as staff in the Recreation Division about all the great programs that we offered in the last year. And one of the things that was really just clear to all of us is the efforts of Carol Jacobs Courts. Carol, she has a really long history with the city of San Rafael. She started working as an employee for the city in 1971 as a recreation leader, and she continued working for the city for 42 years before she retired. And one of the things that we've joked about with Carol multiple times is that she has never really retired. She has always had a presence in one capacity or another. And she has primarily worked at the San Rafael Community Center and with our older adult programs. She has gone and done just some wonderful things with that program and through some real incredible challenges. As you're all aware, the last couple of years have been tough, particularly for our older adult programs and vulnerable populations in our community. And she has really helped that organization in both a volunteer capacity as well as a contractor and an employee of the city to help weather some of those storms and run some incredible programs. So last year, she stepped in. We asked Carol to step in to help provide some programming to help out on an interim basis do some staffing transitions. And she stepped in right away. She agreed to help out. And her guidance and her support of that program has really helped them remain successful throughout the last year. We really think that her efforts deserve special recognition. In the light of all the contributions that she's made to the city, we want to recommend her for this award and nominate her to CPRS to help acknowledge some of those contributions that she's made to the city of San Rafael. So we wanted to bring that forward to you for discussion and see if you would be willing to help support us in that recommendation and nominate her.
Thank you. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Are we just voting to allow the department to nominate her then?
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for nominating Carol. She seems great, and I'm really excited that we'll be nominating someone specifically with work in the aging community. I think that's really cool. So do we have any public comment?
We still have some attendees here, so if you are watching this meeting through Zoom and you would like to speak, please select the raise hand button at this time. All right, Chair, I do not see a raised hand.
Okie dokie, closing public comment, and if I can request a motion in a second to approve and accept the CPRS District 1 Community Service Award nomination of Carol Jacobs Courts.
I motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you. Becky.
All right, Commissioner Cabrales,
Yes.
Commissioner Emerson,
yes.
Chair Gutierrez,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
All right, motion passed. Thank you.
Great. All right, next agenda item, we have other commission reports and comments. Any brief reports on meetings, conferences, or seminars attended by commission members? Anybody have anything to share?
So I was at the meeting for the one we just heard for the steering committee. And one of the comments that I made was in particular to when they were listing the San Rafael City Schools, to also try to include Dominican University in that, only because they had done some amazing programming in the past at Pickleweed, and definitely wanted to make sure that that was still on the radar for that, if that was available to happen. And she changed the wording right away to mention, not limited to, because I think there was also some public comment about trying to involve McGinnis and other, nearby in the city, but not necessarily city-run recreational facilities. So I was happy to see that. And I have to say that I'm really excited about this master plan, because I was in the process when they were interviewing and we were reviewing all these different master plans. And the one thing that I really liked about their plan was how they're getting very specific, and they've just done a really great job of creating a framework to make the decisions that are happening, and taking something that's so unwieldy and sort of giving the framework of how to make the decisions going forward. And what I like about that is that I feel like that framework, even if something happens to come up that is not what we've talked about or been a part in what's there now that we can see, I feel like you can use that framework to help guide those decisions. And I'm just super pleased to see that for this plan, because I feel like that's really going to give value to doing this whole exercise. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. I went to the Boards and Commissions holiday party. That was fun. Thank you to the city for hosting. Saw Commissioner Emerson there and Commissioner Sandoval and some other folks that I met from Pickleweed, and it was really fun to and staff, of course. We also went to the lighted boat parade, and I just wanted to kind of call that out. It's such a great event. I actually had never been. I've lived here for a really long time. And just to echo Lauren's comments about us being a city on the water, I think it's so cool to be able to use those that resource and have these little community events. It was very cool. Very sweet event. So that's all I have to report. All right. I don't know if there's public comment on that. There might be.
All right, so if you are watching this meeting through Zoom and you would like to speak, please go ahead and raise your hand at this time. All right, Chair, we have no raised hands.
All right, let's close public comments. And I do not think we need to vote on anything here. So we move to the next agenda item, which is staff comments. Program updates, schedule of upcoming meetings and events of interest from our staff.
I'll start off and then Catherine, feel free to jump in. I'm going to try to keep it brief. We did share a schedule of upcoming events and meetings that may be of interest. And a couple things I just wanted to call out there. February 8th is the beginning of our spring program online registration. And then February 10th will begin allowing walk-in registration. Our next activity guide should be released in early February. We just finalized that. It's going to print. So hopefully the community is going to receive those in mailboxes very soon. So we're excited about our spring registration coming up. Second Friday Art Walk coming up on February 10th. We have one change since we printed this, the age-friendly San Rafael Older Adult Celebration for ages 85 plus. That date has actually changed to February 19th. It's the following week. So I wanted to call attention to that. And then at Falkirk, we have the 2023 Winter Invitational Exhibition. And it's a really interesting exhibition. There's 2D and 3D pieces there. So I encourage you to go check that out. That is open through February 24th. I think since we last spoke, one thing that has happened program-wise is we did extend our Terra Linda pool hours through mid-December. So I just wanted to call attention to that. That's something that was new. We're still in this pilot program phase of trialing running some fall-winter program hours. We're going to continue to look at when we open this spring, and then likely bring you some more information and potentially a proposal for some changes for the program next year. And then Sun Valley Park, construction began on the playground there. We're really excited about that. And Catherine, I might turn over to you if you had anything you wanted to say about that project.
I think just that at this point, we were lucky that our contractor had buffered in some extra time. So luckily, it sounds like the rains haven't thrown us off schedule too much, and that we will be ready to install the playground equipment when it shows up. And I think at this point, it's looking like a late April reopening. So as soon as we've established the actual ribbon cutting date, we will let you all know.
Great, thank you.
Craig, I had one other thing I realized I wanted to share with this group if you're done.
Yep, you can go for it.
So I know this group is particularly interested in partnerships with kind of the school districts. And over the past couple of months, I've been participating in a series of meetings around the community schools concept, which the Santa Fe City Schools, they received a planning grant for, and now they are in the process of developing a proposal for a larger implementation grant. And so the community schools concept is something that I believe started in New York and has kind of really spread, but it's this idea of bringing more wraparound, holistic services to children and families at the schools. And so in San Rafael, they're really focusing this on serving the Canal neighborhood. So they're looking at developing kind of this community school model at Bahia Vista, San Pedro, Venetia Valley, Davidson, Santa Fe High, and Madrone. And so we've had 2 out of 3 meetings. That's a series that's with a group of stakeholders, both kind of internal Santa Fe City School staff, teachers, community liaisons, as well as representatives from partner organizations that help serve the school district. So 10,000 Degrees, BACR, Canal Alliance, City of San Rafael, Marin Community Clinics, just talking about like the current state of services for our community, how service providers are working with the schools, what's already there, and looking at what kind of would be the goals and model for implementing more of a community schools approach. So I think I actually am not going to be able to attend our February Park and Recreation Commission meeting because the last meeting of that for that program is the same night. And that's also why I wasn't at the board and commission reception, because the first meeting was that night. But I'll let you know how that goes. And I think at this point, there will be more to report out once they have once, fingers crossed, they've secured the grant and actually started implementation. So at this point, it's still kind of planning. I think what's coming out is there are a lot of service providers. There are a lot of people working to serve that community, but what's really lacking is like the connections, and there's a lot of barriers to access, both in terms of the providers accessing the families and then the families being able to access the resources. So how can the schools kind of facilitate that and make that very easy for the families to connect to all of these providers that are providing these really great programs? So yeah, well, more on that as it develops. And I think that's it for tonight.
Any comments on those questions? Okay. I would like to say, I think that's amazing. I'm glad you're part of that. That sounds like a really needed initiative, and I'm just really thrilled to hear it's out there. And then also just on the schedule, I don't know if you said it, Craig. If you did, I didn't catch it, that the city council meeting where they're doing the Park and Rec master plan presentations on the 21st. So I would think for us, if we're interested in kind of hearing how that is presented to city council, that would be a meeting to go to if we needed more night meetings to add to our lives.
Yep, and I think we will have one more commission meeting prior to
Yes.
that. So we'll make sure to remind you as well, but we wanted to make sure that that day in particular was on your radar early.
Thank you. Okay, I think that
I think if we would want to
Public
take
comment?
public comment on
Thank you. Yeah.
the staff report.
Yeah, so if you are watching through Zoom and you would like to speak, please select the raise hand button at this time. All right, Chair, no raised hands.
all right, closing public comment, and I think that means we're adjourning our meeting at 7:39. Is there anything else I need to do to adjourn? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff, public, and commissioners. You made that very easy for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good
all.
night.
Thank
Thanks.
you, everyone.